gross ignorance, do not worship the King, who is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, experience happiness neither in this world nor in the world after death. Next. You are so much devoted to the demigods, but who are they? Indeed, your affection for these demigods is exactly like the affection of an unchaste woman who neglects her married life and gives all attention to her paramour. Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, Vayu, the master of air, Yama, the superintendent of death, the sun god, the director of rainfall, Kuvera, the treasurer, the moon god, the predominating deity of the earth, Agni, the fire god, Varuna, the lord of waters, and all others who are great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, all abide in the body of the king. For this reason, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods, who are simply parts and parcels of the king's body. Purport. There are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. Similarly, King Vena developed a demonic mentality and presented himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such demons are numerous in this age of Kali, and all of them are condemned by great sages and saintly persons. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshula Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karitava Chalam Pangam Langa Tegirim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditalinam Vanchakav Dubishcha Kipasanibhavacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Srila Prabhupada, in this first purport, he says there are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. So when we say the word demon, or when Srila Prabhupada uses the word demon, sometimes people, they think of demon as somebody, they have like two horns on their head, and they have a tail or something like that. But demon means one who is against the authority of God. There was one devotee, Govinda Dasi, one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples, and she was asked by Prabhupada to paint pictures of different, you could say, pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So she was painting one picture of demons tormenting Prahlad Maharaj. And she depicted the demons like this, with horns and so on their heads. But again, it just means somebody who's against the authority of God. And when it says here that there are many demons who think themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets, this could seem to be an exaggeration. Are there really people who think themselves the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets? And it's not an exaggeration. There are people who actually think that they're directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. I remember one devotee, two devotees. They were traveling from Los Angeles to San Diego, and they stopped at a rest stop. And one person, they're dressed in dhoti and kurta, and it was brahmachari. And they asked these devotees. They said, well, specifically, the man came up to the devotees and said, "Yes, I am God, and I'm God absolute, and I direct this and that." And he was claiming to be God. So these two devotees, they started to laugh. They had a humorous relationship, and they started to laugh quite a lot at the man's claim. And then eventually they were laughing so much the man just became frustrated and walked away. But it is a ridiculous claim to claim one is God, because what are they in control of? Ultimately, what are we in control of? We're controlled at every moment. And there should be some qualification. I mean, there is some qualification if one wants to claim godhood. Like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he displays his universal form, and so on. So it's not so easy. So, as Prabhupada says, such people are numerous in this age of Kali, and they're condemned by great sages. All right, so we'll continue. Text 28. King Vena continued, "For this reason, O Brahmins, you should abandon your envy of me, and by your ritualistic activities, you should worship me and offer me all paraphernalia. If you are intelligent, you should know that there's no personality superior to me who can accept the first oblations of all sacrifices." Purport. As stated by Krishna himself throughout Bhagavad Gita, there is no truth superior to him. King Vena was imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead and was also speaking out of false pride, presenting himself as the Supreme Lord. These are all characteristics of a demoniac person. So you also have Hiranyakashipu later in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Claiming no one superior to him, trying to take this position. So this is the typical demoniac principle. All right, text 29. The great sage Maitreya continued, "Thus the king, who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path, became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the requests of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned." Purport. The demons certainly cannot have any faith in the words of authorities. In fact, they are always disrespectful to authorities. They manufacture their own religious principles and disobey great personalities like Vyasa, Narada, and even the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. As soon as one disobeys authority, he immediately becomes very sinful and loses his good fortune. The king was so puffed up and impudent that he dared disrespect the great saintly persons, and this brought him ruination. So due to the verses mentioned in here, he became unintelligent due to sinful life. And deviation from, who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path. So the main, sinful activities that people that are present in this age are illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. And if you look at the four principles that devotees avoid, and if you look at the advertisement industry, it's all about that. All over the city, all over, everywhere, wherever you look, it's all about that. And these sinful activities, as is being mentioned here, they make one unintelligent. So the more one is able to avoid sinful activities, gross and subtle, the more one becomes intelligent, or you could say clear thinking. And the more one is able to avoid these on every level, then that is their good fortune. And of course, it's not just avoiding sinful activities, but the ultimate intelligent move is to surrender to Krishna. That's the ultimate intelligent move. All right, so next, 30. My dear Vidura, all good fortune unto you. The foolish king who thought himself very learned thus insulted the great sages, and the sages, being broken-hearted by the king's words, became very angry at him. All the great saintly sages immediately cried, kill him, kill him. He is the most dreadful, sinful person. If he lives, he will certainly turn the whole world into ashes in no time. Purport. Saintly persons are generally very kind to all kinds of living entities, but they are not unhappy when a serpent or a scorpion is killed. It is not good for saintly persons to kill, but they are encouraged to kill demons, who are exactly like serpents and scorpions. Therefore, all the saintly sages decided to kill King Vena, who was so dreadful and dangerous to all human society. We can appreciate the extent to which the saintly sages actually controlled the king. If the king or government becomes demonic, it is the duty of a saintly person to upset the government and replace it with deserving persons who follow the orders and instructions of saintly persons. So Srila Prabhupada was once in Mayapur, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was walking on a balcony, and there was a poisonous snake below. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told one of his disciples to kill it. And at the time, Prabhupada he said he was a bit shocked, or you could, wondering why his guru asked one of his godbrothers to kill a snake. And later on in his readings, he came across a section in which it described this, that even a saintly person is happy when such envious people or such envious creatures are killed. In the history of spreading Krishna consciousness in India, there was a group of devotees headed by His Holiness Giriraj Swami, and that they were working to establish the Juhu temple. And those of you who know the story, you know the personality of Mr. Nair. And if you don't know the story, you could read the story. It's Juhu book, Juhu story. Very wonderful book. But this person was really, really harassing the devotees. And at one particular point, Srila Prabhupada and him were meeting, And up until this point, they were having, you'd say, not a good relationship, but they weren't outwardly fighting with each other. But in this particular meeting, they were behind closed doors, and the disciples were outside. And then at one particular point, Mr. Nair and Srila Prabhupada, they started to argue, and they're actually shouting at each other. Mr. Nair was again harassing the devotees and just really causing a lot of problems. And so at one particular point, Srila Prabhupada was saying, we invited Krishna there to this land in Juhu, and we cannot ask Krishna to leave. We already invited him there. So we have to build this temple. And then at that particular point, Mr. Nair said, he said, oh, Krishna, he said, I'll break your Krishna. Means referring to because the deities were there. Krishna. I'm speaking. Huh? I'm speaking. Yeah, I'm speaking. Prem Vilas here. So he said, Krishna, and he said, I'll break your Krishna. That's what Mr. Nair said. And then later, when Srila Prabhupada was in New Zealand, Giraj Das Brahmachari, he was in Bombay and going around making life members, and he glanced at a local newspaper, and on that newspaper it said A.B. Nair died. And he was the first person to know about it. And at the time, he said he was actually feeling quite relieved, or he was feeling some happiness knowing that this person died. And he was wondering, was this a proper mood to have? So then he went back to the temple, and he told the devotees, and the devotees were also happy. And then he was wondering, is this right? So later on, soon, Srila Prabhupada, he heard about it. And Srila Prabhupada, after hearing about how Mr. Nair died, Prabhupada put his hands, he folded his hands, and he said, I was praying to Krishna that Krishna would take care of him, this person. So Prabhupada was also, because the idea, he was creating so much trouble for the devotees. So here, it's mentioning how King Vena, he was creating so much trouble for human society at large, and the sages, they immediately cried out, just kill him. Better that this person, is not around. Now, of course, that's not our particular method. It means, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, he was killing the demonic mentality. So that's the idea, that by spreading Krishna consciousness, we destroy the demonic mentality. Okay, so we'll go to the next one, 32. The saintly sages continued, this impious, impudent man does not deserve to sit on the throne at all. He is so shameless that he even dared insult the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. Purport. One should not at any time tolerate blasphemy and insults against Lord Vishnu or his devotees. A devotee is generally very humble and meek, and he is reluctant to pick a quarrel with anyone. Nor does he envy anyone. However, a pure devotee immediately becomes fiery with anger when he sees that Lord Vishnu or his devotee is insulted. This is the duty of a devotee. Although a devotee maintains an attitude of meekness and gentleness, it is a great fault on his part if he remains silent when the Lord or his devotee is blasphemed. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that one should not at any time tolerate blasphemy and insults against Lord Vishnu or his devotees. A devotee is generally very humble and meek, and he's reluctant to pick a quarrel with anyone. So a devotee, for themselves, they'll tolerate so many things, right? More tolerant than a tree. A tree cannot protest. We were discussing that last night at the temple. A tree cannot protest if it's too cold, if it's too hot, if somebody's carving their name in the tree. A tree can't protest, but a human can. So when we say more tolerant than a tree, this is what it's referring to. We have to be very, very tolerant. But, and we see this in the life of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was very tolerant. For example, there was one man who would always criticize him. Always criticize him. And at one particular point, this man died. It's a similar, anyways, but... And the devotees, they were all feeling very happy. That means the disciples, that this person's not around and he can't criticize our guru anymore. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was actually sad that, oh, this person is gone. Now who's going to criticize me? So you see the difference. Before we were talking about how Srila Prabhupada was happy Mr. Nair left because he was harassing the devotees so much. And then you have this case of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that was sad that this particular criticizer left. And the difference is that Mr. Nair was attacking the devotees, and that therefore Srila Prabhupada couldn't tolerate that. And then you have this case of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that this man was attacking him, and he was tolerating. So that's the idea. We should tolerate if the criticism is directed towards us, but if it is directed towards others, devotees, then we shouldn't tolerate. A devotee is generally very humble and meek, and he's reluctant to pick a quarrel with anyone. Nor does he envy anyone. So, like Srila Prabhupada said, that if one does not have to take a certificate that they are advancing in Krishna consciousness. Just like when we, for example, it's Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day, and there's a fast till the evening. When we sit down to have the Lord Nrsingadev's feast, we don't have to take a certificate right afterwards that, yes, I am full now. I am satisfied. No one needs to give us a certificate. It means we already know. It's in our experience. So similarly, if one's advancing in Krishna consciousness, then there doesn't have to be a certificate given to us, but the signs will be there. And one of the signs, Srila Prabhupada said that if one is non-envious and if one is not jealous, then they're in the spiritual world. And if they are those things, then they're in the material world. And envy doesn't just mean, okay, you envy something that somebody has, but envy, another definition of envy, just means malice or some dislike or hatred for others. Yeah. All right, so next, 33. But for King Vena, who is simply inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of fortune and opulence? Purport: when human society individually or collectively becomes godless and blasphemes the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is certainly destined for ruination. Such a civilization invites all kinds of bad fortune due to not appreciating the mercy of the Lord. All right, next. The great sages, thus manifesting their covert anger, immediately decided to kill the king. Generally, sages don't do this, but King Vena was already as good as dead due to his blasphemy against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, without using any weapons, the sages killed King Vena simply by high-sounding words. Yeah. Okay, next. After all the sages returned to their respective hermitages, the mother of King Vena, Sunita, became very much aggrieved because of her son's death. Typical good mother, right? Even though the son's extremely bad, she's still, I mean, of course, it's natural to feel aggrieved at your son's death, but this son was really, really bad. But anyways, she decided to preserve the dead body of her son by the application of certain ingredients and by chanting mantras, mantra yogena. I mean, Vena was so bad. In his childhood, he would kill when he was out playing with other boys on the playground or wherever. He would actually kill them, really. Once upon a time, the same saintly persons, after taking their bath in the river Saraswati, began to perform their daily duties by offering oblations into the sacrificial fires. After this, sitting on the bank of the river, they began to talk about the transcendental person and his pastimes. In those days, there were various disturbances in the country that were creating a panic in society. Therefore, all the sages began to talk amongst themselves. Since the king is dead, and there is no protector in the world, misfortune may befall the people in general, on account of rogues and thieves. Purport: whenever there is a disturbance in the state or a panic situation, the property and lives of the citizens become unsafe. This is caused by the uprising of various thieves and rogues. At such a time, it is to be understood that the ruler or the government is dead. All of these misfortunes happened due to the death of King Vena. Thus the saintly persons became very anxious for the safety of the people in general. The conclusion is that even though saintly persons have no business in political affairs, they are always compassionate upon the people in general. Thus, even though they are always aloof from society, out of mercy and compassion, they consider how the citizens can peacefully execute their rituals and follow the rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. This was the concern of these sages. In this age of Kali, everything is disturbed. Therefore, saintly persons should take to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, as recommended in the Shastras. Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva Nasteva Gatir Anyata. So, it's interesting because although Vena was such a bad ruler in every way, he was still keeping these rogues and thieves at bay. They were not creating havoc. But as soon as Vena left, they all came out and started creating havoc. So although he was such a disqualified or unqualified leader, he was amazingly still doing something right, in the sense he was keeping all of these people, from creating so many disturbances. Of course, that doesn't mean he should have continued, but it's interesting that, it's an interesting point. In the end of the purport, both for spiritual and material prosperity, everyone should devotedly chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Okay, 38. When the great sages were carrying on their discussion in this way, they saw a dust storm arising from all directions. This storm was caused by the running of thieves and rogues who were engaged in plundering the citizens. Purport: thieves and rogues simply await some political upset in order to take the opportunity to plunder the people in general. To keep thieves and rogues inactive in their profession, a strong government is always required.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, about this, can you go back to the next?
The previous one.
Yeah, this one, yeah. To keep thieves and rogues inactive in their profession, a strong government is always required. Just like also in some places in Middle East, there's a number of different places in the Middle East, but where did one of my friends, he went to Qatar or Doha, and he was walking around with another devotee. He was there communicating Krishna consciousness, but so he's walking around the city and he saw that these different stands that sold vegetables and so on and different things, they wouldn't lock anything up. All they would do, they would just put a cloth over everything and then they would just retire for the night. They weren't worried that anybody was going to steal. Which is, yeah, I mean, the idea is because if they did steal, the government would severely punish them. So, as it's being mentioned here, that to keep thieves and rogues inactive in their profession, a strong government is always required. So it's the business of the government to... All right, next. Upon seeing the dust storm, the saintly persons could understand that there was a great deal of irregularities due to the death of King Vena. Without government, the state was devoid of law and order, and consequently, there was a great uprising of murderous thieves and rogues who were plundering the riches of the people in general. Although the great sages could subdue the disturbance by their powers, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper on their part to do so. Thus, they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. Purport: the saintly persons and great sages killed King Vena out of emergency, but they did not choose to take part in the government in order to subdue the uprising of thieves and rogues which took place after the death of King Vena. It is not the duty of Brahmins and saintly persons to kill, although they may sometimes do so in the case of emergency. They could kill all the thieves and rogues by the prowess of their mantras, but they thought it the duty of Kshatriya kings to do so. Thus they reluctantly did not take part in the killing business. So in some cases it's necessary. They thought it was necessary, okay, to kill King Vena. But then after that chaos manifested, and then at that point, they were thinking, okay, well, this isn't necessary. Let the Kshatriyas do it. Which is interesting because they're the ones who, you could say, from their act, so many, chaos came. So the question is, okay, how do we know? How do we know, in general, what to do? And the answer is the typical answer, and the best answer is that we should consult with qualified persons, qualified saintly persons, sadhus, spiritual master, the scripture. This is how we guide our lives. All right, next, 41. The great sages began to think that although a Brahmin is peaceful and impartial because he's equal to everyone, it is still not his duty to neglect poor humans. By such neglect, a Brahmin's spiritual power diminishes, just as water kept in a cracked pot leaks out. Purport: the Brahmins, the topmost section of human society, are mostly devotees. They are generally unaware of the happenings within the material world, because they're always busy in their activities of spiritual advancement. Nonetheless, when there is a calamity in human society, they cannot remain impartial. If they do not do something to relieve the distressed condition of human society, it is said that due to such neglect, their spiritual knowledge diminishes. Almost all the sages go to the Himalayas for their personal benefit, but Prahlad Maharaj said that he did not want liberation alone. He decided to wait until he was able to deliver all the fallen souls of the world. So, yes, we have to be transcendental. Means transcendental to the ongoings or the ongoings of this world. We cannot be overly concerned or overly disturbed by what's going on in the world. But still, we can't be too transcendental, meaning that we should have concern in the sense that we want to help others. Just like last night, one person asked the question that he was making the point that, it's everything that seems to be going here on at the temple seems to be selfish. And he was saying how, it's all about the individual and their spiritual advancement. And it seems to be neglecting the world, escaping from the world. And I was mentioning how we're not escapists. We're not wanting to run to the Himalayas, just like Prahlad Maharaj is saying here that he didn't run off to the Himalayas for his own spiritual benefit or personal benefit, but he stayed in the city to try to give people Krishna consciousness. And the point that's brought up is that why do we have temples in the city? There's no real other reason than to give people Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, devotees don't really have any business in the city. All right, continuing. In their elevated condition, the Brahmins are called Vaishnavas. There are two types of Brahmins, namely Brahman Pandit and Brahman Vaishnava. A qualified Brahmin is naturally very learned, but when his learning is advanced in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes a Brahman Vaishnava. Unless one becomes a Vaishnava, one's perfection of Brahminical culture is incomplete. The saintly persons considered very wisely that although King Vena was very sinful, he was born in a family descending from Dhruva Maharaj. Therefore, the semen in the family must be protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Keshava. As such, the sages wanted to take some steps to relieve the situation. For one of a king, everything was being disturbed and turned topsy-turvy. Can you go to the next? Sages are the descendants of the family of the saintly king of Vishnu. So does anybody have any questions or comments at this point?
Anybody like to ask anything? Hare Krishna.
What was that?
No, I was asking if anybody wants to ask anything or say anything. So I have a question, bro. So till what level should one tolerate? You're saying that for others, we should not tolerate, but for oneself, one should tolerate. So is there a limit on
Yes.
the tolerance? So maybe you can say something about that.
All right. I mean, sometimes people may mistreat us, and as the general principle is, we tolerate. But for the purpose of of education means for the purpose of educating them or maybe educating others, we may say something. Sometimes that's the case. Like, for example, I don't know. I mean, sometimes people, they mistreat me. Can you believe it? Sometimes they do that. They mistreat me, and yeah, I mean, I try to be tolerant, but sometimes I think to myself that, okay, if they're mistreating me, they're probably just going to continue mistreating others, and this is like a whole. They're going to continue like this. So then I decide that, okay, well, let me say something, so I could try to encourage them to stop and stop their general course of action, which is actually dangerous for themselves and others. But as like one of my friends, he told me one time that because when you're in a community living situation, like in an ashram, for example, it means you're dealing with people every day. Sometimes it could be quite challenging. So he told me 9 times roses and then 10th time club. Like a Balaram has a club. Or yeah. So we could tolerate, but if it's a syndrome and they just keep on doing it, then yeah, we may say something in a humble way and a Vaishnav way for their benefit. So, but in terms of what's the point, what's the tipping point, when is too much, or when is, at what point should you not tolerate? That has to be considered, and we have to consider this in an intelligent way. We have to, and that comes from experience. Like Srila Prabhupada said one time, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So you have bad judgment, and then you have experience, and then you have good judgment. So over time, we can more easily decide what is worth our time and what is not worth our time. Or as the general saying goes, you have to pick your battles. So is it really worth it? So generally devotees tolerate, so they have time. Fighting takes a lot of time. Quarreling, fighting, it takes a lot of time. So devotees think, okay, better not do that. Let me chant Hare Krishna. Let me distribute books. Let me do so many activities in Krishna consciousness rather than wasting my time. So yeah, and if we're having trouble deciding, should I tolerate, should I continue tolerating, or should I say something or whatever, then we could discuss that with our Shiksha gurus, our instructing teachers. Yeah. And they could help us decide. Does anybody?
So
Yes.
is that how much you can tolerate depends on your level of spiritual advancement. Like we say, Haridas Thakur was being beaten in the 22 marketplaces and he was praying for their forgiveness. So, but
Yeah.
we cannot, but if we are not at that level of spiritual advancement and like that, then we should act at our level of spiritual advancement where we are at, or just, see the ideal and.
I mean, we have to be careful because sometimes you think, okay, well, I'll act on my level of spiritual advancement. You think, well, I'm not so advanced, so I'll just act, in an improper way. Like Srila Prabhupada said about devotees imitating Haridas Thakur, because Haridas Thakur, he would be chanting, right, so much Hare Krishna day and night. And then Srila Prabhupada, there was devotees who were complaining to Srila Prabhupada that there's devotees and they're chanting, the temple devotees, and they're chanting, and we want to engage them in service. There's a lot of service that needs to be done. You could say practical service. Things need to get done. But it seems that they're busy imitating Haridas Thakur. And then Srila Prabhupada said, that's fine. It's okay to imitate Haridas Thakur. He said, imitation of a good thing is good. But then Srila Prabhupada said that, but if somebody comes up to that devotee and says, Prabhu, can you please help? We have so many things we need help with. There's a festival coming. Can you help cook? Can you help cut vegetables? Et cetera, et cetera. And the person says, no, I can't do that. I'm too busy imitating Haridas Thakur. So that's not good. So yeah, should we... Can you repeat the first part of your question?
Yeah, I was just saying that, how tolerate depending on the level of where we are at, or we just try to stretch beyond our and keep tolerating, seeing the ideal example of,
And in your mention, does it depend on one's spiritual advancement?
correct.
Yeah, we should strive for the ideal. We should know what the highest ideal is, and we should strive for that. We should really, really try for that. I mean, the tendency in Kali Yuga is, okay, well, there's 6 Goswamis, there's Haridas Thakur, there's all of these great personalities, and of course, to get even close to their level of advancement, you could say seems very challenging. But we should know what that is, that highest ideal, and we should really strive for that. But it is true that one's level of tolerance does depend on one's spiritual advancement. Just like people who are really in the bodily concept of life. I mean, they're very easily offended. Just like if you walk in a bad neighborhood in Columbus or wherever. I mean, there's people who are if you just look at them, not even in a offensive way or whatever, you just look at them and they're immediately offended. Why are you looking at me? Who do you think you are? Or this is a whole, in America and throughout the world, the whole territorial kind of gang-related activities, really in the bodily concept of life. So yeah, if one is spiritually advanced, they're not in the bodily concept of life, and therefore they're not easily offended. Because whatever offenses however one criticizes another person, it's all based on the body. And they say, well, I'm not the body, so. But anyways, those are some points. Do you have any thoughts in relation to that?
Yeah, you were mentioning about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that person used to criticize him, and the devotees were not happy about it. But was that criticism just or unjust? Is that something that we have to look at when somebody is saying something about somebody? Like, do we make like a judgment on whether that criticism is... Because the devotees were unhappy because maybe the criticism was not justified.
Well, I mean, whatever criticism that you throw to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it's not justified because, in the sense that he's a pure liberated soul, and whatever he's doing is for the pleasure of Krishna. So really, that person shouldn't really be criticizing him at all because he's of spotless character. So what? But even if you're to say, okay, thinking about other devotees, is if somebody is criticizing them, or let's say somebody's criticizing us. I mean, personally, in some ways, I kind of find it challenging when somebody criticizes me on the basis of something that is just not true, because it's just not true, and I know it's not true, but they're really convinced it is true, and then they criticize me, and then the other people, they kind of spread the criticisms around, and then it's just a bit of a strange phenomenon. Now you could say, okay, well, if it's not true, then why are you so disturbed? And it's a good question. Why would someone be disturbed? Any ideas? Why do you think someone would be, if someone's criticizing you and it's not true, why would you be disturbed? Do you have any?
Yeah, because he may talk about that to other persons and it may spoil your reputation, so you're concerned about your reputation and your sense of worth, right? Everybody feels a sense of worth of themselves, and that gets hurt when you internally know it's not true and then somebody's saying so. That's why you react or you say something to that situation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could deal with, anyways, for me personally, I could deal with criticism towards me that's true, because it's true. It's like, okay, well. But if it's not true, yeah. I mean, especially with dealing with devotees, anyways, but still, even though, like, I've dealt with situations like that, and I thought that maybe I should say something, and try to clarify these things. But somehow or other, I just didn't say anything. I just tolerated it. I said, okay, well, it's not true, and they're thinking ill of me, and they're probably talking ill of me towards others. And this is, in the community I live, and I'm thinking, all right, well, I get that. That's fine. Krishna will work it out in time. And I just kind of tolerate that. And I was telling one devotee, and they were like, well, yeah, that's a good principle to follow for yourself. But he was wondering maybe I should say something. So anyways, you get into it could be a little complicated. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, yeah, the criticism was unfounded. But specifically, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was sad because he would say, if somebody criticizes me, then they're my friend. And the idea is that criticism does help us, in the sense that it will help us be humble. So, anyways, that's another point.
I think Juhi wanted to ask something.
Okay.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful class. I just wanted to ask, there was mentioning about where the saintly sages are killing the King Vena. So, I mean, in Vedic injunction, in general, it is recommended, not to have violence against anyone, right? I mean, here also, we see there was violence committed by in the Kurukshetra war also, but that was on the authority, a Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shri Krishna was present personally over there, and he gave instruction to Arjuna to fight. to do his duty. But here, like, on what authority? Like, what, I mean, the saintly sages, were the sages like the government, the most powerful people of that time, that they can decide by on like accord of themselves that what decisions to take, and that will, because in today's life also, like, I feel like it is just encouraging violence. I'm just thinking that in that context, there are many saintly people present in this time also, and it's not like without the laws that are in place by the government, that saintly person just cannot take a decision on himself, like by himself, that okay, this person is very bad, let me kill him. Like, cannot. So,
well,
how do we justify that?
I mean, these were very qualified sages, to be mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Of course, there's all different types of personalities mentioned in the Bhagavatam, but the personalities in the Bhagavatam are all exceptional. It means you have exceptional demons, you have exceptional devotees, exceptional Brahmins. So they were very qualified, and apparently at the time, there wasn't anyone to take care of Vena. It means to remove him. So they felt that he became so out of control that by him continuing in his position, it would just destroy everything, literally. So he became so evil that they felt, okay, let's remove him. And yeah, again, apparently there wasn't anybody else to do that. So the Brahmins, traditionally, they were advisors to kings. So they would advise the king in certain ways, and then the king would act. But again, at the time, there wasn't anyone like that to take care of Vena, so they said, okay, well, we're going to take care of the situation. And again, just like if you have Mussolini or Hitler or any other such persons in history, most will agree, yes, this person needs to be removed. I mean, we say all people, not all people, most 99.9% will agree that such people need to be removed. So then it's just a question of how to do that. But it's not. But you could say, what is their authority? Their authority is, of course, we could say there's no mention that Krishna told them to do that. But their authority is their, you could say, position as Brahmins, and again, that there was no one else to take care of the situation. So they actually did it out of compassion. But it doesn't encourage unnecessary violence, but there is need for violence sometimes. And this is one particular case. But yeah, we have to be careful, of course. Like, for example, it says, anyways, yeah, we have to be careful. So I hope that...
Yes, thank you, Ruth.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
All right, Krishna.
Thank you for a very nice class. I had a question. So, in general, should the devotees participate in politics? So I was remembering this past time where, Prabhupada first met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he initially was part of the India independence movement. And, when Bhaktisiddhanta asked him to, spread the message in the West, Prabhupada replied that, well, first India should become independent. Who would listen to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message? And until, the Britishers were also doing a lot of atrocities on India. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said Krishna consciousness cannot wait for the change in politics because it's a temporary situation. Right now we are being ruled by Britishers, and after this we'll be ruled by some other person. So we should concentrate on Krishna consciousness. So in general, how should a devotee, like, should he participate in politics as well as politics of within the devotee community, like leadership, and who should be a leader, and whether we should care or should just concentrate on our own Krishna consciousness.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we have to be very careful dealing with politics. Like Srila Prabhupada was in a car in India, and a devotee was in the back of the car, and he was talking to one big politician. And this devotee was encouraging this politician that, you could continue as a politician and try to bring people to Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada, he turned around and he said, no. He said, politics, it's a dirty game. You should get out as soon as possible. So politics in general, whether you say Indian politics or American politics or whatever country of the world nowadays, there's so much news out there. It's just a constant flow, like the Ganga, but not like the Ganga. Doesn't have the purifying effect of the Ganga. It's a constant flow of news. And we could be connected all over the world. And if you have your iPhone with notifications on, ding, 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 all the time, all types of news stories. So we have to be careful. And Srila Prabhupada said, quoting Prahlad Maharaj, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. And then Srila Prabhupada said, not Shravanam Kirtanam, some politician. Because if we hear and chant about Krishna, then Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Saddhikabanoy Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Koridor, that the love for Krishna will awaken. And if we chant and hear about politics, then we don't develop our love for Krishna. So we have to be careful. Now, I know devotees follow the news, and that's okay in a sense, but again, we just have to be careful about that. In terms of the devotee politics, if we want to say devotee politics, if we're in management, then yes, we do have to deal with so many different issues. That's our job, or that's our service. And if we're in positions of leadership, then we do have to deal with many issues. But if we're not, then we should just not be involved. It's not really our service. It's not really our business. And we should try to not be so absorbed in all of the, you could say, disagreements or problems or seemingly problems within the society of ISKCON. Because a lot of the times we don't really have much of a say in it anyways. It's not that we're going to change things necessarily. So but to each person's different, and we have to be careful. Main thing is that we have to be Krishna conscious. So I hope that.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I think somebody else had a question or a comment, seemed.
Somebody else? Let's see.
I thought it was Preeti. She had something or no?
Yes, Prabhu, I had something, but actually my son wake up, so I think it's gonna create a noise. So I'll type my question in the chat, maybe.
I think you could ask it. We don't hear.
Okay. Actually, I was just making one comment on that also, that you are talking about the demons thing. So I was thinking that, in this age, the demonic qualities is all within ourselves, right? Uh, like in other ages, the demons are outside. Like you see that in Satyuga, the Hiranyakashipu and Kansa and Ravana. So it's, but in the Kali Yuga, it's all within. I know we have a demon like in eye and mind, right? False ego is all within ourselves. So one has to, like, in the some purport, it is said that one has to kill by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and one has to kill this. Basically, one has to kill this demonic mentality within ourselves. So that's a point that remind myself. And even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also said that, right? Those who are not who discard the scriptural injunction, and in this age of Kali, nobody is following the scriptures. Mostly people are not following the injunctions of the scriptures, and they are act according to their own whims. And I think in the 16th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has described these demonic nature. So he says that, right, that person not even attain any happiness, or they are not attaining the supreme destination. So these are these things. And other thing I was thinking on I think Prabhuji was asking that. So it reminds the story of how one can tolerate for oneself, if someone criticize or abuse, because everybody has their different kind of conditioning or understanding than how people think in their own way. Maybe your intention is not saying something or not hurting or anything like in a wrong way, but sometimes your words or it take people misunderstood like in other way, right? So sometimes I feel like that one has to clarify if anybody has any kind of misunderstanding, or they don't understand your explanation, then they should ask without even making their own theory. One should ask that and clarify, oh, is that your intention or not? And other thing, I remind the story of a snake, when the Narada was telling that, okay, you should, when someone, the kids of that throwing the stones at the snake. So he was tolerating, but at some point you have to oppose also, right? Because if something is obstructing your sadhana, your scripture in a devotional service, that is priority, that is your goal, that is your purpose. So you should say, as you said, that in a humble way, and you should try to tell your message, and rest is up to Krishna, right? It says that if you leave everything, then Krishna will take care of all this. And other point I was thinking, that absorption is important, right? Our Goswamis and our acharyas they were completely absorbed in thinking of Krishna, so they don't have time to think of any other things. Either it's related to the even anything, even Sat or Asat, both. So they are just absorbed in Krishna. So as a devotee, we should try to increase our absorption in thinking of Krishna. Right, Prabhuji?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
And my question was, quickly I ask that, okay, I just the opposite, that if someone, even in the devotee discussion, if someone is just telling about the kind of a simple thing, like a nature of a devotee, or every devotee is different. Sometimes some devotee reacts, or sometimes some people are not reacting, or anything. I don't see any example to say, but if someone is talking about simple, oh, this person has like kind of this nature, or we don't have to react on. I mean, he says that if someone is either someone blasphemed the Lord or Lord's devotee. So, do you think that in such type of a talk one should react, or till then we can just okay, it's just a simple thing until unless if someone is not saying something bad about the devotee.
Yeah. I mean, one way of following this principle of not tolerating devotees, blasphemy of devotees, is just to remove oneself from the situation. So you could say, okay, you are somewhere, and then some devotee is talking about another devotee, then you just leave. It's like a way of, you could say in some ways that you're like not reacting because you're not defending the devotee, but it's an authentic way. You just leave, or you distance yourself from such people. Is that what you're referring to? Like situation like that?
Yes, Prabhu. It's
Yeah.
not like something bad. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the offenses or a lot of the blasphemy of devotees, it doesn't happen like, okay, two devotees sit down and let's have a meeting about somebody and let's criticize them. But a lot of it happens a bit unconsciously in the course of conversation. They're talking about this, that, so many different things. And then at one point, they may talk ill of somebody a bit unconsciously. So therefore, the principle is, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that when we're growing our bhakti lata bij, it's in the heart growing, and we're watering it with the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, and eventually it will produce the fruit of love of God. We have to protect that creeper, that plant, that growing creeper of devotion within our heart. And he says that we have to therefore build a fence around that creeper. And the fence in this analogy is pure devotees. It is the association of pure devotees. And if you think about it, devotees, pure devotees, they don't really want to engage in this criticizing business. So in that way, the association of pure devotees actually protects us from what? The mad elephant. And what is the mad elephant? The mad elephant is Vaishnava Aparad, means offending devotees. What is, devotees have analyzed this, okay, apa means without, and radha without Srimati Radharani's mercy. So if we commit Vaishnava Aparad, we don't have Srimati Radharani's mercy. And what type of chance does anybody have in Krishna consciousness without Srimati Radharani's mercy? They don't have any chance. So therefore, the devotees are always stressing, do not commit Vaishnava Aparad, especially that Aparad. That's the worst of them all. So yeah, we have to protect our creeper with the association of pure devotees, more advanced devotees, and then we'll be protected from the mad elephant offense. And yeah, part of that. So one is that okay, we leave the space. You may say something to the person in the course of a conversation, but the most important principle is actually to associate with more advanced devotees who are devoid of the desire to criticize others. So that's a point. And yeah, because you're saying like we needed to clarify. Okay, if I don't understand what you're saying, if you don't understand what I'm saying, and then maybe there's some miscommunication, and instead of speculating about this person's motives or what this person meant, we can discuss with them. And that's very important. Just like devotees, okay, they say gambling, but Srila Prabhupada also said we shouldn't speculate. Means, yeah, like mental speculation. But this is also, in a sense, in the realm of speculation, means we're speculating, we're guessing what somebody else is thinking, what else somebody's motives are. It's not the best. It's not a good course, actually. So yeah, we should clarify with communication. So anyways, those are some points. I was just thinking you made many nice comments and a question and a nice question. I was thinking that'd be a lot to write because you were, But anyways, thank you very much, Hare Krishna. I hope that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Are there any other? I'm not sure how long this usually goes for.
Yeah, I mean, if we have questions, we can go on. I think.
Does anyone have any last question or comment?
So I have one question. So this is about the serpents and scorpions. The saintly persons are happy when they're killed. So let's say there is a serpent going somewhere near my house. Would I go and kill it if it's not attacking me, or it's not, because I think that's what you were mentioning, the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur saw some serpent.
Yeah. Specifically poisonous serpents. I mean, snakes in general, they're said to be envious because they'll just bite you for no reason. But specifically poisonous, apparently there's some justification for killing them. Rattlesnakes or different other creatures.
But the environmentalists may tell you that it's part of the ecological system, and if you kill those animals, then it's created by God to maintain ecological balance. And so, I mean, some people will say like that. So
yeah, I mean, we don't want to go on like some, snake killing expedition. And generally, in the cities and so on, we're not really dealing with that so much. So it's usually not a big issue. But I mean, I know devotees who are at farms, communities, and yeah, I mean, when they would see a rattlesnake, poisonous snake, other snakes they would just, but when they'd see a poisonous snake, then they would kill the snake. And maybe the idea is that, okay, the snake can bite one of them randomly and inject poison into them. Or I'm not sure if snakes randomly bite like cows, for example, or other dogs or something, but because they have cows and they have outside dogs there. So yeah, but if one is to kill a snake, which personally, I mean, for most devotees, they'd have a hard time killing a snake also because, it's killing another living being. But if someone is going to, if they're in a situation where there are poisonous snakes and they're going to, or they're even thinking about it, they have to be careful that it's not coming from a place of, you could say, envy for the snake, or they find some type of happiness or something, and means some type of unhealthy happiness and killing. And that's the problem with power, and that's the problem with these situations, because when people are put in situations of power in which they could be violent, like even in war, it's not uncommon that they become unhealthy, they become violent in an unhealthy way. So that's the challenge. So that's.
Thank you, bro. Yes. Anybody else has anything to say?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Am I audible?
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Yeah, I had one question if there is time.
Yes.
Thank you. I was thinking about removal of a person who is bad or a demon that we were discussing. I've heard spiritual teachers say that a person is not bad, it's the influence of Prakriti or like Tamogun, Rajogun. So how do we understand and like how do we apply that?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when the soul turns away from Krishna and they embrace the illusory energy of Krishna, and when they enter material existence and they become absorbed in material nature, they can exhibit high forms of evilness, because they're, in extreme cases, they're completely covered by ignorance. Just like, for example, everyone has a conscience. So there's a conscience means there's a sense that, okay, right and wrong. I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do that, or I should do this, or I should do that. There's a voice there, you could say. Or as some devotee would say, Krishna conscience. Now, when somebody becomes completely covered by material nature, that conscience or that ability to hear that voice is like completely muted. Means they could do anything sinful and evil to hurt others and themselves. And therefore, that's very dangerous. You call those people like criminals. But ultimately, everyone, that verse, Nityasada Krishna Prema Sadhika Vinoy, that everyone is ultimately eternal servant of Krishna. And that, yeah, their real nature is good. But in material existence, they become covered, and you could say it is the influences of the modes of nature. But we can't just blame the influence of the modes of nature. It's the soul wanting. It's the soul, or you could say it's the living entity wanting to neglect Krishna, wanting to enjoy without Krishna, to be the master and controller. And in extreme forms, this gets really, I mean, it's ugly in non-extreme forms, but in extreme forms, it becomes very, very ugly. So therefore, the living entity has to wake up from this illusion and return to their pristine nature. So yeah, I mean, ultimately everyone is good, but there's some covering going on. I hope that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, I think anybody else? There's nobody else who has raised their hand. Or anybody like to ask anything else? Okay.
All right. So
we can continue tomorrow. Tomorrow's class. Okay, Janish, you want to say anything?
No, just wanted to thank Prabhuji for the beautiful class. We'll hope to hear more from him during the weekend. So, Hare Krishna.
thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So tomorrow
Hare Krishna.
we are going to have this Srimad Bhagavatam class.
See you later.
Okay.
In the temple. In the temple. We are going to have the class in the temple. So you please come. Everybody can come for
Yeah, tomorrow, right?
Yeah, in-person class. And there is also going to be, I mean, we come for Aarti morning program also. So anybody who wants to come, the class is at about 7:45. But if you want to come before that for Japa or Tulsi Aarti or something, then anybody on the call, they are available. They can join also.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all very much. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you very
Krishna,
much,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.